नमस्कार। पिछले सत्र में हमने देखा कि मोहित ने बहुत ही सुंदरता से हमें स्थित प्रज्ञ और उसके लक्षणों के बारे में हमें समझाया। और जैसा कि भगवान कृष्ण ने यथावत रूप में अर्जुन को कहा था, इस सत्र में भी मैं चाहूंगा कि मैं मोहित से ही शुरुआत करूं, क्योंकि शायद पुराने सत्र पिछले सत्र में आखिरी में उनकी आवाज बहुत स्पष्ट नहीं थी। तो मैं चाहूंगा कि एक बार मोहित से हम फिर शुरुआत करें।
तो अंतिम श्लोक के विषय में हम चर्चा कर रहे थे। एषा ब्राह्मी स्थिति पार्थम नैनाम प्राप्य विमुह्यति स्थित्वास्यामंत कालेपि ब्रह्म निर्वाणमृच्छति। हे अर्जुन, यह ब्रह्म को प्राप्त हुए पुरुष की स्थिति है। इसको प्राप्त होकर योगी कभी मोहित नहीं होता और अंतकाल में भी इस ब्राह्मी स्थिति में स्थित होकर ब्रह्मानंद को प्राप्त होता है। मतलब जब व्यक्ति इस द्वंद्व रहित स्थिति को, समत्व भाव को प्राप्त कर लेता है, परमात्मा को प्राप्त कर लेता है, तो उस स्थिति में व्यक्ति कितने भी भोग उसके सामने आ जाए, उससे कभी भी वो मोहित नहीं होता। और जब व्यक्ति इस पथ पे अग्रसर होता है तो इस पथ पे चलने के लिए दो उपाय हैं जो महापुरुषों द्वारा बताए गए हैं। पहला उपाय है सेवा। जो भी भोग हमारे सामने आते हैं, सबसे पहले हमारे अंदर सेवा भाव होना चाहिए कि हम उन भोगों को दूसरों की सेवा में प्रवृत्त कर दें। हम दूसरों का कल्याण कैसे करें, है ना। अगर हम, आपने ये अनुभव किया होगा, अगर हम कोई भी एक्ट करते हैं दूसरों के लिए, कोई भी कार्य करते हैं दूसरों के लिए, तब हमारे अंदर एक आत्म संतुष्टि का भाव होता है। परंतु हम स्वार्थ के लिए जितना भी प्रयत्न करते हैं, उतना ही हमको अधिक की आवश्यकता होती है। तो और हमारे उपनिषदों में कहा गया है कि जो स्वार्थ की जो अग्नि है, हमारी जो विषय अग्नि है, उसके अंदर हम जितना वो कार्य करेंगे उतने ही ज्यादा वो घी का काम करती है। उस अग्नि के अंदर वो अग्नि उतनी ज्यादा प्रज्वलित होती है। तो इससे मुक्ति का एक ही उपाय है कि हम इंद्रिय निग्रह कर लें, हम इंद्रियों को उन सब विषयों से ले लें। तो जितना घी पड़ गया है उतनी अग्नि वो जलेगी, है ना। और उसके पश्चात वो अग्नि अपने आप ही शांत हो जाएगी, अगर हम हमारी इंद्रियों का निग्रह कर लेते हैं। तो एक तो सेवा भाव और एक विवेक। अगर हम विवेक से सभी वस्तुओं के विषय में अगर लॉन्ग टर्म थिंकिंग में सोचें कि हमको किससे लाभ होगा, क्या हमारे लिए सही है और क्या हमारे लिए गलत है, तो अगर ऐसा सोच करके विवेक से हम निर्णय लेते हैं, तो ये दोनों चीजें, सेवा और विवेक, हमको इस पथ पे अग्रसर होने में सहायता कर सकती है। और एक बार हम ब्रह्म तत्व में स्थित हो जाते हैं, तो इस स्थिति में जब अंतकाल आता है मनुष्य का, तो उस स्थिति में भी व्यक्ति उसी भाव में स्थित होकर ब्रह्मानंद को प्राप्त करता है। मतलब भगवान को प्राप्त करता है, भगवान में विलीन हो जाता है, भगवान से उसका संयोग हो जाता है, नित्य संयोग हो जाता है। तो इस प्रकार से द्वितीय अध्याय का ये 72nd श्लोक था, यहाँ पर समाप्त होता है। धन्यवाद।
नमस्कार। आज के इस सत्र को इतनी खूबसूरती से पेश करने के लिए मोहित का धन्यवाद। उनका काफी कुछ जो अध्ययन है वो बहुत ही सुंदरता से उन्होंने हमें समझाया। अगला वाचन उन्होंने मेरे लिए एक तरीके से बहुत ही कठिन बना दिया है समझाने के लिए, पर मैं अपना पूरा प्रयास करूंगा। और मेरा वाचन अंग्रेजी में रहेगा, जिससे कि हम दोनों माध्यम से लोगों तक पहुंच पाए। So, uh, in the last session, from very last sessions that we are doing the chapter 2, which is the Sankhya Yoga. And in all of these, in this particular chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we have seen that Lord Krishna, explaining the dilemma of Arjuna, has told us about the true nature, the eternal existence, the impermeability of Atma, that is death, doctrine of disinterested action. So, having all these things done, now we think that what Lord Krishna is not stopping here. He's coming out with all gyan that a Brahma can have. And this particular section, as told by the previous speaker, is Sthitaprajña. So let us start. So initially, when, as I told, Krishna started saying that there is no difference between us and the Brahma. We are not limited to this body and mind. We exist in every particle. In fact, we are the source of everything in this universe, and nothing else exists here apart from us. We are eternal, all encompassing, and ever blissful. Please do understand, when we are saying we, I don't want to say this body. I want to say this eternal existence that we carry within ourselves. We are in everything in this universe, and everything is within us. All this Brahma Gyan might be true, but we don't feel like that, right? So, therefore, to help us evolve spiritually and to achieve this self-realization, Sri Krishna, in the previous lecture, as we know, has taught us doctrine of Karma Yoga. And with the Karma Yoga, he gave us a step-by-step approach to this self-realization. While all these things seems very logical, it seems quite unbelievable and more or less very less theoretical. For most of us, it's quite impossible to think what it means to be enlightened. With our limited understanding, we think that enlightened people are those who stay in cave or probably at a distant places in forest and live like ascetic life of sannyasi. I'm not denying that. There are elevated souls who are just limited to all those areas. But Shri Krishna, from this particular section, that is the Sthitaprajña, shows us that the spiritual progress can be even made by us, and it can be available to each one of us by going through the theme of Sthitaprajña, by going through the theme of doctrine of disinterested action. So this is what Arjuna was also curious. This is what Arjuna was also curious, and he asks Lord Krishna, what are the lakshana of Sthitaprajña? This is what he says, and he says that like we also are right now facing the problem that how do enlightened persons behave, how do they conduct their daily activities, how do they see themselves in everything and everything in themselves, and how do these people manage to not fall for the various temptations of life. This is what Arjun says. So in entire Gita ji, we are finding that what may be our inquisitions from the Lord are being told by Arjun. And he says, Sthitaprajñasya ka bhasha samadhi tasya keshava sthitadhi kim prabhasheta kimasit vrajet kim. Arjuna asks, O Keshav, what is the disposition of one who is situated in the divine consciousness? How does an enlightened person talk? How does he sit? How does he walk? And to address these questions, Lord Krishna gives us the doctrine of Sthitaprajña. All these questions are not only going to give us a good insight of what Lord wants to tell us, but from here we can also assess, we can also measure our own spiritual progress. And so therefore, this particular section of Bhagavad Gita becomes very important for all of us for our journey of spiritual progress as we are doing right now. So understand that in the next few verses, Bhagwan is going to tell us about what are the attributes of Sthitaprajña. In Hindi, I should say, Sthitaprajña ke lakshan kya honge. So the first of the thing is giving up desires. Okay, so we all know that we grew up from very childhood and we always had certain sense of desires. Let's say we always had a desire to eat candies. We always had desire to eat toffees, chocolates, everything. And as we grew up, we understood that, okay, these are not those things that are very necessary. In fact, all these temptations are giving us ill health or something of that sort. So in short, we understand that we understand as we go on. Like I gave an example of candy because that is an easier example. But as we progress, we all know that initially, let's say we have a desire to buy a two-wheeler. When that gets fulfilled, we get a desirous trap of getting into car. And then all these desires keep propping up. So what we can say that by reading scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, we understand that these desires are the ones binding us to samsara. Okay, so after all, we understand that all these things that we are running towards, we are running towards the desire, they are only potentially harmful. Okay, because they are never going to get never going to get satisfied. So with the help of Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads, we can see the bigger picture of who our own true identity, that we are eternal, we are all encompassing, and we are ever blissful beings. Once we understand this and we start giving up the desires, and if we keep proactively engaged in spiritual leanings, bhakti, we notice that some of these desires start to fall automatically. Therefore, one of the most important signs that we are making spiritually, that we are making towards the spiritual progress, is to notice that we are slowly giving up desires. So the first lakshan of Sthitaprajña is giving up desire. Okay. By giving up desire, it does not mean that we have to give up the activities. Okay, we have to keep doing our duties. We have to keep doing our duties dutifully without getting attached. That is what doctrine of disinterested action talks about. So while we do all these things time and again, we will get desire. Our desires will subsequently fade away. And this is what is elaborated by Bhagwan Krishna in the verse number 55. That is, he says that Prajahati yada kaman sarvan manogatan atmanyetvatna tushtah sthitaprajnasta dochyate. Means he wants to say that only when one discards all selfish desires, craving of senses that torment the mind, and becomes satisfied in the realization of the self. Self means the capital S self. Okay, that is the self, not this body. Understanding that what we are what? We are eternal. We are not bound in time and space. Such a person is said to be transcendently situated. Okay. So again, I'm reiterating that if we keep focused, we can easily reach to a state where desires no longer bind us. From what? From Sharanagati, that is bhakti. From really understand, from the Gyan, that is really understanding who we really are. And by the ashraya of nama. Ashraya means to get to take the support of nama. In Kali Yuga, nam is said to be the biggest thing. Just take ashraya of chanting. Okay, this is what probably in the previous lecture Mohit mentioned about Neem Karoli Baba. So he actually remained true to Bhagwan Ram. He only remained true to the name itself. He only advised to his bhakt that take the ashraya of name. Okay, so by all these measures, by all these spiritual activities or practices, we can give up the desire. And again, I'm mentioning that giving up desire does not mean giving up activities. We have to participate in activities, but remaining detached. We have to perform our duty dutifully. Okay, so okay. So one of the active attributes of the Pragya that was actually focused a great deal in the previous session by my previous speaker, that is Mohit, was equanimity. Equanimity in Hindi means samatvam. Okay. So understand that, let's say, take an example. So whenever, let's say, our parents used to go, and probably today also the parents who are newly married and they have their babies and they go for the vaccination, most of the toddlers start crying even before the vaccine has been operated on them or vaccine has been administered over them. Why do they so? Because they feel that anxiety, they feel that fear, they feel the fear of that pain. That's even true for all of us. Okay, so if we look at our lives, we are stressed, we are worried, we are angry, we are bothered. Why we are bothered? We are bothered because of the future. Okay, because the uncertainty that lays beyond the present. We think that situations in the future will hurt us. So we hurt ourselves today by worrying more about them. So in short, we actually are troubling our own selves more than the circumstances. Okay, so one has to understand that circumstances that we are going to face or we right now facing are not the result, probably not only the result of what we are doing right now. They are also the results of the prarabdha karma. There is nothing that we can do to avoid them. Okay, even Lord Krishna, being Paratma Brahm, when he came to this particular earth, even he cannot go beyond the prarabdha. Okay, while everything is under his control still. So there is nothing we can do to avoid all these things. So prarabdha karma is fixed for our life. While we cannot avoid circumstances, spiritual knowledge at least can help me lead a very good life, and not thinking about miseries. At least we can escape from the anticipation of these troubles. Okay, so what is a spiritually evolved soul? A spiritually evolved soul is one who clearly witnesses the relationship between the circumstances and the prarabdha. Okay, he knows that the best approach for the future is to prepare to the best of our abilities and to withstand whatever comes our way. Okay, and this is what we have seen in shloka, I think 14, when Bhagwan says about the favorable and unfavorable circumstances by Shitoshna Dukha Sukhadaha. He says that one has to one should understand that all these experiences that we are having in our lives are temporary. Okay, the cold water that seems very suitable in summers is not going to be that fruitful. That particular cold water is not going to be as soothing as in summers, in winters. Okay, so one has to understand the temporality of the experience. Okay, so understand this particular thing Lord Krishna says in 2.14 in the name of Titiksha. Okay, so what spiritually evolved souls think about. So spiritually evolved souls not only think about the unpleasant situations only, they even think that pleasant situations that they are facing, okay, that are also the outcome of prarabdha karma. Okay, and the only option for us is to just go through it without getting impacted by it. Okay, so again the same thing, sukhe dukhe samay kritva labha labho jaya jayo. So neither and understand that neither the pleasure is going to remain permanent nor pain is going to remain permanent. So this particular attribute is the first attribute of Sthitaprajña, that is samatvam. Okay, and one has to remain. What is the way ahead? Way ahead is 2.14. 2.14, what does it say? Agamo payano nitya, means whatever experience you are getting right now it's not going to last, or it's not going to last forever. Okay, so it is anitya. When it is anitya, so don't remain attached to that particular thing. The very simple thing, as I told in Samatvam lecture also, it's not this that you are sad. It's not that dukh is giving you something. It's that I am dukhi. मतलब आप दुख आपको उतना परेशान नहीं कर रहा है जितना मैं दुखी हूं ये परेशान कर रहा है, राइट? सो द आंसर टू ऑल दिस थिंग्स इज कि हम अगर दुख के दृष्टा बन जाएं तो हमारी लाइफ आसान हो जाएगी, राइट? सो अंडरस्टैंड दैट नीदर द प्लेजेंट नॉर अनप्लेजेंट सर्कमस्टेंसेस आर गोइंग टू लास्ट फॉरएवर. So therefore we have to limit ourselves to what Lord Krishna had to say in the 2.14, that is agamo payano anitya. We have to understand the temporality of the existence. So therefore the first attribute I want to focus is equanimity. And this is how the spiritually evolved souls are. They are equipoised. They are focused on their spiritual journey, whether situation is pleasant or unpleasant. Their happiness does not depend on the external circumstances. Instead, they are eternally happy due to their connection with the inner self. Again, self means capital S self. And showing this equanimity, whether it's a bad condition or a good condition, is one of the lakshan of an enlightened soul. And this is what Krishna says in the shloka 56, that is dukheshu anudvigna manaha sukheshu vigataspraha vita raga bhaya krodho sthitidhir munir uchyate. That is one whose mind remains undisturbed amidst misery, who does not crave for pleasure, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady wisdom. Okay, so this is the first gun that Bhagwan Krishna is. This is the first attribute that Bhagwan Krishna is saying about Sthitaprajña. Okay, and he goes on to say that one who remains unattached under all conditions and is neither delighted by good fortune nor is dejected by hardship is what he names Sthitaprajña. That is, यह सर्वत्रानभिस्नेह तत् प्राप्य शुभ अशुभम नाभिनंदन्ति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. Means one who remains unattached under any condition. Okay, when he is not dejected by tribulation, one who is not even feeling elated about good fortune, is Sthitaprajña. Okay, so therefore, as we build our spiritual practices and our focus on our spiritual progress, if we are focused, like I told in the previous lesson also, in previous lecture also, focus like Meera, that mere to girdhar gopal dusro na koi. If that is our vision, if that is the that is the intensity of our goal, that goal of spiritual progress, then nothing can deter us. So as we build our spiritual practices and are focused on our spiritual progress, this equanimous behavior starts occurring automatically. And if we notice this happening, so understand, if we are noticing this happening, we can be rest assured about our spiritual progress. And that is what I initially I told you also, that in all of these slokas, try to apply them to yourselves. Try to apply to yourself. And that is a big parameter to gauge your own spiritual progress. So all these shlokas, please apply to yourself also, okay? So one of the things that people these days are saying, that what is love, what is love? So understand, love is not possessiveness. Understand that we love our families, we love our professions, achievements, and there is an endless thing to it. For many, love for a few of above reaches such an obsession and attachment that they cannot think of losing them, okay? Even throwing small perfumes or old clothes becomes very difficult for us. This kind of obsession and attachment makes them fearful, as they're worried about losing someone, okay? Same way, understand, when Arjuna is saying that I love all these people, I love all these fellows, these are my brothers, these are my gurus, and everything of that sort. I'm not saying go and kill your gurus or something like that. But when Arjuna is standing in Kurukshetra, when he's standing in the Dharamkshetra, his duty as a Kshatriya tells him, it warrants him to take an action, okay? Nothing can bind, not even his argument that he loves someone. So please do understand that we don't love others for others' sake. We love others because we love ourselves, okay? Because we want ourselves to be complete, okay? This completeness is what we are craving for in any relationship or possession or activity. But as we go spiritually, as we make some spiritual progress, we realize that our completeness or happiness does not depend upon the things outside us. We are already complete. As told by my previous speaker, that one of the names of Bhagwan or Paramatma or Brahm is Satchidananda. We are complete. We are Ananda. Okay? We are already complete. And the joy we crave is already within us. We are looking it in the wrong places. And when we are looking it in wrong places, it results in pain, disappointment, and sadness. But once we understand that our love for everything in our lives changes from love for want to love for love's sake, the possessiveness and attachment in love dissipate, making it all the more purer. Okay. So this way, as we progress on our spiritual path, our definition of love changes and everything goes beyond attachment and obsession and changes to be love for love's sake, not for love for want's sake. So now, having made such a little bit of sketch, let me move to the shlok 58 and 59. So another thing that we actually often confront, let's say I get a transfer to a place, let's say not a very, you can say not very conducive, okay, not very conducive. Let's say I get transferred to some place and I don't have good things to eat, limitations, let's say I'm vegetarian, so I cannot go beyond a point, okay? So, and as we come back to the place, let's say I come back to the place, let's say I went to USA and I don't have much to eat. So I somehow craved for my own desires. I could not eat. And now when I come back to my place, the first thing that I would do, I'll go to the favorite restaurant in my city and I'll eat whatever I can. So and I'm sure that most of you might have faced the similar situations in your life, isn't it? So it lets us to ask a question that how difficult it is to deprive or suppress senses, okay, our sensory pleasures. We may get successful. Let's say I got transferred to USA. I know that I have nothing to eat there. So I may get successful for a period. But as I went back to my own city, I bounced back to my own things, okay? So we all like taste, we all like to see, we all like to smell, we all like to touch, we all like to hear nice things. Okay, and many times we even let these senses get out of control, and let's say we get into intoxication and all those wrong things. For many, unfortunately, fulfilling the needs and wants of these senses become the goals of their life, leading to what? Nothing. Disappointments, fears, worries, and unhappiness in their lives. There is a quotation that you don't you don't die at 75, you die at 25, because all you are doing at 25 is just building up desires, and you are just fulfilling them, and you are doing nothing. If something is not getting fulfilled, then you are facing disappointments, fears, worries, and unhappiness, as told by my previous speaker also, that the condition of mental health, which is Lord Krishna is going to elaborate in further verses, is because of the desires. So this brings me to the shloka of 58, that what makes us what differentiates a spiritually evolved soul. So spiritually evolved soul has a complete control of his senses. They can indulge and withdraw from their senses at the snap of their fingers. Okay, so understand, this is what Lord Krishna says by taking an example of a tortoise. Okay, by taking an example of tortoise, and he says, yada sanharate chayam kurmo angani iva sarvashah indriyani indriya arthibhyah tasya pragya pratishtita. One who is able to withdraw the senses from their objects, just as a tortoise withdraws its limbs into its shell, is established in the divine wisdom. So one another way of explaining what Sthitaprajña really means. Okay, so first lakshan that we saw was giving up the desires. The second lakshan of Sthitaprajña we saw was samatvam, and the third lakshan that we are seeing, we can say that it is indriya nigraha or mano nigraha. Okay, so one who has control of his senses, that is indriya nigraha. Nigraha in Hindi means to like control, right? So who has this indriya nigraha or mano nigraha is yet another attribute of Sthitaprajña. Okay, and he goes on to say that that in all early stages of life we may restrain the senses from their enjoyment, but the liking for sense pleasures remains. However, as we continue on the path of enlightenment, even this liking ceases to exist. That is, initially it may become very difficult for us to restrain from the senses. Okay, but as we go on our path of spiritual journey, slowly we are going to have a detachment towards all these senses. And this is what Lord Krishna has to say in Shlok 59, that is, Vishya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam raso apyasya param drishtva nivartate. Means aspirants may restrain the senses from their objects of enjoyment, but the taste for the senses object remains. That is, as I told, that in early stages we may restrain the senses from their enjoyment, but the liking for the sense pleasure remains. However, as we continue our journey or our path of enlightenment, even this liking ceases to exist. And this is what he says, that however, even this taste ceases for those who realizes the Supreme. That is, one who realizes the Supreme, even this taste for the object goes away, fades away. Okay. As you can see, that the key to Indriya Nigraha or Mano Nigraha is not to forcefully stop senses from their pleasure, as that will never work. Okay, that is always going to bounce back very fastly. So senses are known to bounce back very fastly, so you cannot like bring a complete control to your senses in a minute. Okay, so one has to focus on the spiritual journey, one has to progress on his spiritual practice, be whatsoever, and one has to take the ashraya of Guru. Okay, if your Guru says that just do the Nam Sankirtan, you just do the Nam Sankirtan. Okay, if your Guru says that take the resort of Upanishads, take the resort of Upanishads. Okay, if your Guru says go for a Hatha Yoga, go for a Hatha Yoga. Okay, so one has to understand, one has to focus on his spiritual practice, and only that can slowly take away the sensory pleasures. Okay, so this is another lakshan of Sthitaprajña. Now, the last lakshan in 2.60 that has been told, I can sum that particular thing up by the name Rishikesha. Okay, so as you know that Rishikesha means one who has complete control of the senses, and this is one of the names of Lord Krishna himself. Okay, so let us understand. So I'll finish my lecture by this lakshan attributes only today, so because I don't have much of the time. So just understand. So when we go to the temples, we feel very peaceful, isn't it? We feel very serene. Our senses also are in complete control. Okay, we try to keep as much as control to our senses as possible. Okay, we don't have negative thoughts in temples. we have complete focus to the deity. But the moment we step out of the temple, it even does not take even a second for us. So probably many people would go and start eating something here and there and every sort of all those things. So basically, the same thing happens also with our spiritual practices also. That is, when we start chanting or probably meditating, or let's say somebody is doing rituals, for some time the senses remain in control, but the moment we are done or moment we are alone, the senses take over us. Probably one may be, even if one is a scholar in Vedanta, he may be very working hard for a spiritual progress, but even a single temptation can delude him. So that is what Lord Krishna is saying in this particular shloka. That is, yatato yapi kaunteya purushasya vipashrichitah indriyani pramathini haranti prabhasam manah. Means he wants to say that that the senses are so strong and they are turbulent that they can easily sweep away the minds of even the highest learned person, most analytically astute, or those skillful in self-control also. Even their vision can, even their spiritual practice can get demolished even in a single temptation. Okay, so what can be suggested? What can be suggested means, what can be suggested is a 5-pronged approach. That is remove, restrain, resolve, regularity, and vigilance. Okay, so first thing, that we must try to remove ourselves from every situation of temptations. Okay, many times we know that what makes our minds or senses go wary. Okay, we have to identify those situations and actively stay away from them. Let's say restrain. So being a grihastha, there are situations where we can't remove ourselves. We have to take care of the family. We have to manage our expenses. We have to manage the social relations also. When we can't remove ourselves, we need to practice restraint. We need to practice the borders. Okay, resolve. To practice the remove and restrain, we need to have a resolve. Resolve of what? Is resolve of the highest progress. That is the spiritual progress or spiritual enlightenment. Resolve is that fuel which can help us in our way of discarding the world full of temptations. Regularity. Now by regularity, what I mean? Chant regularly, do visit temple regularly, or whatever is your spiritual sadhana, do it for the regular basis. So that is going to help us build the resolve of the spiritual enlightenment. We must acquire the knowledge, follow the principle of Shravan, Manan, then Nidhyasana. And only then it is going to internalize. What is going to internalize? The resolve. And we must come up with a daily routine of reading scriptures, chanting, meditations, rituals, whatsoever. Last is vigilant. So we have to remain vigilant, keep a closed eye to the temptations, and stop reacting to them. When needed, we must use remove and restraint to fall for these temptations. And as we are going to continue these measures, as we are going to continue our measures, we are going to become the controller of our senses. I can say only to a level extent, okay, not completely, because after all, Rishikesha is Rishikesha, and his Maya is all pervading. As long as he's not willing, we cannot do so. But let's say by God's grace, by the grace of the Guru, by the grace of Guru Granth and Gita ji, we can probably come to some level of success. And just give me a minute. Okay, and that's so when we reach that state, we no longer need to follow the we become the controller of our senses. Okay, and this is what is said in the Shlok 2.61. I don't know where that has gone, but okay. So that is what has been told in the Shlok 61. That is, those who have internalized the knowledge, tamed their senses, and are engrossed in the Brahma within or outside, are in real sense the Sthitaprajña. Okay, and that is what Lord Krishna has to say in the Shlok 61. That is, Tani Sarvani Sanyamya Yukta Asita Matparaha Vashehi Yasya Indriyani Tasya Pragya Pratishtita. Okay, and by this I'm stopping my talk here, because I have lack of time. I hope to continue in the next lecture, in the next session, when we are going to meet by the complete different topic. That is, what if I don't do all these things? Okay, what if I don't do all these things? And which brings us to one of the most important shloks of Bhagavad Gita, most read shloks of Bhagavad Gita. Probably even the NCERT standard 10th Sanskrit book also contains this particular shlok. So it is very important. One needs to understand the importance of all these shlokas. But let's take all these shlokas in the next session. So I conclude my talk here by the attributes of Sthitaprajña. Thank you.
बहुत ही खूबसूरत एक्सप्लेनेशन के लिए थैंक यू भैया। एंड तो इसी के साथ हम आज का सत्र समाप्त करते हैं और हम मिलते हैं अगले सप्ताह। जय श्री कृष्ण। धन्यवाद।
I think Alpna is not audible. Is there anybody who's to say something? If anybody has to say something, we can have another session. So, if that's the case, Ankita has to say something.
जय श्री कृष्ण। आज मैं आप सभी के सामने गीता अध्याय 2 के स्थित प्रज्ञा के विषय के बारे में ही चर्चा करना चाहूंगी। तो वैसे तो आप सभी ने बहुत ही परिपूर्ण तरीके से ये सब कुछ समझाया है।
Ankita,
परंतु मैं फिर से
can we have another session? Okay, because there are only 2 minutes left, so I'll put another.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll put another link. Please join through that link. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, just give me.